You're listening to Triple R, and that, of course, led to Subtract. Last week, I was fortunate to speak with Aaron Jerome, who records as Subtract. He will be performing in Australia, his first ever Australian tour, this Friday, the 21st of October at Roxanne Parlour. I spoke with Subtract over the phone a little bit about the idea of personality and crafting imaginary personalities within his music, and the purpose of the mask, the famous mask which he wears in a lot of his promotional and publicity sort of shots, and the purpose behind that.
Yeah, I think it was initially the idea that I can get away with writing music and not having to talk about myself all the time, or it's not, because of this whole thing of writing music in this kind of world, I feel like it's not so much this personal life experience story that needs to be told to kind of put your music across, really. And I think, Subtract was about taking myself away from that whole kind of making music thing, and I think that having this whole creative outlet to be able to make what I want to do and put all these influences together, really. But yeah, I don't know, that's kind of, it sort of develops into the whole side of why the masks and also, the look and as well as the sound, I think. Yeah, well, as a sort of musician or an artist, basically, I'm deeply inspired by whatever in electronic music, whatever's coming out, and in the UK especially, it's quite fast moving in terms of sounds and kind of genres that are appearing and new kind of ideas as well, and I think the problem with that sort of world is everything becomes so transient, very much in other music scenes outside of electronic music, things seem to work at a much slower pace, I think, and people appreciate and kind of go back to music and listen to it over and over again and sort of see the subtleties of the differences. For me, that's kind of why I write the music I do, is sort of taking a slight step away from having to be so cutting edge or kind of new that it becomes so transient, because it sounds great, what you're writing in 6 months' time, it's going to be perfect, but after that 6 months, the kind of, it's already, kind of in the past, really, and it sounds of its moment. So yeah, I try and write music which will have more longevity. Yeah, I don't know.
Definitely. Absolutely. Well, I guess part of it also goes to sort of, as you say, that idea of looking outwards and not necessarily always inwards. And I think what's very remarkable about, I suppose, the career that you've had is the musical relationships that you've developed and the collaborations, I suppose, with artists from a very broad musical spectrum. In your case, you genuinely seem to be welcoming the opportunity to work with other people. Is that an important part of your philosophy?
Yeah, I really enjoy collaborating with other artists, whether it's just as producers or productions or kind of on vocalist level or kind of that thing, because for me it just inspires you to kind of go beyond your kind of the realm of your safety net, basically, of what you normally do. I think, a lot of what I do is sitting in front of in a studio with a few keyboards and a laptop and that kind of thing, and very much you kind of never grow further out of that. I think you put other people into the mix, your horizons are widened even further, and you can go into totally different directions. And I inspire off bouncing ideas off other people or the the new ideas and the new their influences and what they bring to the table. I think and for me that's always been the most exciting thing, writing music with people who I think have really interesting ideas or takes on their musical mission, and putting these two together and making some totally contrasting record. The one thing I don't like about collaborations is when people do things which very much sound like one person meets another, say like a vocalist and a producer, and it sounds like there's the producer's record, there's the vocalist, and there's a sort of definite split of kind of personality between it, whereas I kind of like, taking myself and whoever I work with and creating a totally new in-between world, between those two kind of things. And that pretty much means sort of sitting in a studio working with someone from the beginning, really.
Listening to the voice right now of Aaron Jerome, who records and releases as Subtract. I spoke with him over the phone last week on the eve of his first ever Australian tour, and was fortunate to kind of talk about, as we were just now, the collaborations which Subtract has featured heavily, not only on previous releases, but also on his self-titled album out this year, Little Dragon and Samfer, among many guests featuring on the record. Subtract, due to the success of the record and the positive response to the sound, receives a lot of requests for remixes, unfortunately none or very few of which he is able to contribute. But one high-profile act who did approach Subtract for a remix was Radiohead, and Subtract's remix of Lotus Flower has just been released on the compilation The King of Limbs Remixes. I asked Subtract about the response that Tom York and the rest of Radiohead had to that remix.
Yeah, no, he was really excited. One thing he said is it was giving him insomnia because he kept on going around in his head when he was trying to sleep. I think, he had it's kind of got a very identified. It was kind of funny because obviously it's his vocal, but I think he said the beat, the melody of it kept on going around in his head all the time. But he just seemed really super enthusiastic about new music in general, and I think he's very keen to kind of work and with kind of newer artists as well, and seeking what's going on out there. I think, and especially electronic music, obviously, it's very kind of, there's a lot of flourishing things happening at the moment. I think, he seems really supportive on that front. I think he was, it's very few and far between you ever get response or kind of feedback from an artist, especially as big as they are, I guess. So it's really impressive that would even take the time to respond, I think.